Okay, spoiler warning for both Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman. I realized I hadn't warned anyone before in my last video about Man of Steel and PVS, like for spoilers. But like honestly, these movies are all a few years old so far. If you haven't seen them yet, that's on you. I mean, come on. Man of Steel came out in 2013, 14. BVS came out in 2016. You had your time. You had the chance. So, but how? Okay, first movie, Suicide Squad. How to talk about the third movie in the DCEU, Suicide Squad, directed by David Ayer, released in August of 2016. I'm not gonna lie, when I first watched this movie, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't love it, but I liked it enough that I was willing to go see it twice in a theater and get the extended cut. Watching it now, I had to rewrite this review several times because the more I think about this movie, the more I realize that I don't like it. Definitely not as much as I did when I first saw it. Now I've come to realize that I just like the actors, most of the characters, and the fact that it's in the world of DC. And yep, that's all I like about it. That's it. That's it. This is kind of eye opening for me because when I have like a bunch of people screaming in my face that something's bad, my immediate response is to love it out of spite. Like, it isn't an utter garbage bin of a movie. It's just okay all around. It's got some good parts surrounding a bad script. It's not like the worst movie ever. It's not the worst comic book movie ever. It's honestly wasn't even the worst movie of 2016. Like, honestly, guys, the vehement hate it got was unjustified, just as much as the vehement defense of it was unjustified. I say this mostly because of all the way the criticism of this movie was screamed and beaten into the ground, almost the same way people beat Star Wars movies into the ground. That being said, while I didn't watch anything as bad as people claimed it was, it's not a good movie. The first third really, I felt for me, really pulled me in. It's my favorite part of the movie, where it spends the time to introduce us to the characters in a quick, colorful, bullet-pointed fashion that I think doesn't get much credit. It's here where the actors get like their best lines, honestly, or at the very least, the most entertaining lines. I really need to look at all their personalities, I think. Like, listening to Deadshot and Harley Quinn go back and forth with the scummy, gross security guard was really funny to me. And it was a good way to set up the characters, I think. It was the one time where I think David Ayer undeniably used good writing technique, assuming he wrote this movie. I'm pretty sure he wrote this movie. Not 100% sure. If it wasn't David Ayer, I apologize. On the idea of, like, blaming the writing on him. If he didn't write it, but still. In this first quarter, this first third, best way to put it, he fleshed them out by having them riff off other characters. That's how you showed us who they are. You rarely want characters to be alone. It's incredibly difficult and oftentimes unnecessarily slow to try and flesh out a character by having them riff off themselves or the environment in front of them. Like, another good example of this is when Amanda Waller introduces the Enchantress to the White House, or whatever politicians they were. The subtle imagery of having the Enchantress's hand move from the shadow of her host, June Moon, and then take control of her by flipping June's hand over tells us a lot of things about their relationship. But it only works when there's two people there. Even the two people are sharing a body, does more for both of their characters than anything else that happens in this movie. Like, sure, there were a million ways to tell us that the Enchantress was taking over June, but this was a pretty gnarly, visually interesting, and informative way to do it. Now, from there, I'm going to get into the criticism level at this movie about the characters not being real villains, because in the first third of the movie, and throughout the second third, they most certainly are. That criticism is based off the third act, which is far and away the worst part of the movie. In the beginning, everyone is at each other's throats, nobody likes each other, even though they're all villains. Then there's this camaraderie that shows up whenever it becomes an us versus them situation with Amanda Waller and her government stooge Rick Flag. The best thing from the movie starts when the villains meet Amanda Waller one by one. A performance which I must say is not only the most comic accurate one in this movie, it's the best fucking one in the movie. But I'll get to Viola Davis and her amazingness later. When they talk to Amanda Waller, or when she's talking to them, it's clear that all of them are bad guys. The way Deadshot threatens to kill the security guard, make demands of Waller, and show off his ability doesn't come off from the arrogance of an overconfident superhero, but a supervillain who knows exactly who he is and feels no shame in it. Throughout the movie, Will Smith's Deadshot is constantly being insulted by Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag for being a mercenary, and just rolls off Deadshot's shoulders because not only is Flag right about him, Deadshot is proud of himself. Deadshot likes being who he is, right up until his daughter's hanging around him. He's a bad dude, not an anti-hero, and it's interesting and entertaining to see what he'll do next. And that same behavior goes for all the Suicide Squad until that weird bar scene about 2/3 into the film. When the villains are getting their stuff back, they threaten and try to intimidate each other, save for Harley Quinn. I do have problems with that scene where she goes around trying to vex people while also trying to make friends, because it doesn't make sense from like the Harley Quinn they have, but it's like a minor thing, honestly, to the problems in this movie. I think for the most part, this scene works to show that there are no loyalties until Flag shows up. There truly isn't honor among thieves when there's only thieves. But when authority comes in, they're all buddy-buddy, talking and working and scheming to get free, because they'd rather work together and be killed by each other than die for Rick Flag. This theme of honor among thieves until there's only thieves is the one theme that this movie almost carries through to the end. I thoroughly enjoyed watching Captain Boomerang and Harley Quinn act like friends 1 minute, talking about escaping, to trading insults the moment Flag is no longer in eyeshot. They're all two-faced criminals as they should be, minus El Diablo and Killer Croc. The former being that he wants to atone for his sins, and the latter being an honest-to-God monster with no character depth at all. Even not that anything cares about character depth, but like, he was not going for character depth. No one was going for character depth with Killer Croc. Not that you really need to, though. I guess in the comics he actually does have a lot of character depth. But like, now let's get into some of the really bad parts. The plot was bare bones and simple, and clearly lacked an ending in the writing room because it's really by the books and full of holes in logic and character development. It makes no sense for El Diablo to call the team his familia, or for Harley Quinn to call the team her friends. Also, how the hell does the Enchantress consider a magic blue beam a machine? Like, why did they need to blow up the beam with a bomb? And most importantly, how the hell did they even stand a chance against the Enchantress after El Diablo died? Like, they should have been shrimp meat. She should have just been able to swipe her heart from Rick Flag's hands with ease at any moment during the ending. But I digress. Everyone knows this. I don't need to, nor do I want to explain every inch of why the last third of this movie is bad movie logic at its worst. Because right now, I want to harken back to the first video in the series. Like, this series of videos that I've made, not the first movie in the DCEU. Because I said in that last video that I don't think the performances in these DC movies are a problem. I bring this up to be honest and maintain a sense of credibility, because for the most part, I still stand by that statement. Acting, by and far, isn't the problem with these movies. This movie included. But I gotta say, I utterly forgot about how bad the Enchantress was. I don't think there was anything that Cara Delevingne, the actress who played her, could have done with what she was given, but it was so bad. Like, it was so bad. I wish she moving like that in her full Enchantress form. Like, I've seen her in other stuff. I know Cara Delevingne can do better. I chalk it up to poor direction and the fact that her lines are bare bones when she becomes the ultimate villain of the movie and not an actual member of the Suicide Squad, as like trailers led us to believe. I mean, with the few lines she had, wiggling her hips like an inflatable pole was probably the only thing she could think of to do. And how are the rest of the actors? The surface level characters like Killer Croc, El Diablo, and Katana are fine. Killer Croc and Katana didn't need to be in the movie, and El Diablo is only there as a MacGuffin. But Jai Courtney, on the other hand, is hilarious as Captain Boomerang. I will fight any fucking person alive and everybody on that. But even though he was this is probably Jai Courtney's best performance I've ever seen him in. He isn't merely just comedic relief. He's not important all to the plot, but he's fucking great. All right, I love him. I'm glad he's gonna be in the sequel, or like whatever reboot, whatever the thing James Gunn is doing with him, with some of the old characters, but none of the old plot. Also, Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag, he's good. He plays the same character he usually does when he's not on House of Cards. Just like a gruff, tough guy. But I must say, he is good at playing a gruff, tough guy who doesn't come off as like an idiot when he's talking. Like, I liked him in Altered Carbon, and he was good here, but Rick Flag is a by-the-numbers character, and he always has been. Kinnaman was never going to be able to get any real chance to flex his acting chops like he did in Altered Carbon. And if you're wondering why I name-dropped Altered Carbon 3 times now, it's because I think everyone should watch it. That is all. But how are the four real stars of this show? I mean, movie. You know what I mean. The people everyone came here to see. It's a sliding scale. That's the best way I can describe the four best performances. Well, I shouldn't say best. Yeah, I shouldn't say. No, I guess you could say they're the best performances. I would say that. They're definitely the most interesting. But, like, again, Viola Davis is the best in this movie. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. She is perfectly cast as Amanda Waller and perfectly embodies that vicious anything goes drive that the character should have. Even when the script and the plot doesn't support her established character, Viola Davis never phones it in. The best example of this is at the very end, when she's revealed to have survived the Enchantress attack, which she shouldn't have, but still. Davis doesn't look bored or annoyed as she continues to blackmail everyone in this ridiculously stupid scene that should be worse than it is. It survives only because Davis sells the scene as much as she can when not even Will Smith tries. Because let's be real, any of the characters really could have killed her after the final fight, taken the trigger bomb device from her, and escaped with ease. It really wouldn't have been that hard. Okay, I know that was a tangent, and I got off topic, but that scene really pisses me off. But back to Waller. She's at her best in the small moments, where she's showing not only her vast knowledge about the people she's using, but explaining how she's using them. She's cold and distant in her monologue, displaying how she can control Deadshot through his daughter, or Flag through the Enchantress. My favorite scene in the movie is where Rick Flag tries to convince her to use real soldiers instead of criminals, and threatens to go to his friends among their superiors. She doesn't cower or compromise. She calls his bluff with the coldest threat of putting his girlfriend into an induced coma, acting without doubt or hesitation. He not only believes her, but the tension in this scene and the only real acting Kinnaman has to do in this movie makes it seem almost as if the threat could be worse than she's letting on. In what is easily the best scene in the movie, Flag says, "I didn't believe the stories." After meeting the true Amanda Waller, and the way she responds with, "Nobody ever does," it shows how Viola Davis perfectly captures the Amanda Waller character at her best. And as good as Amanda Waller is, the character everyone really came to see was Harley Quinn. Famous artist and co-publisher at DC Comics, Jim Lee, said himself that they consider Harley Quinn the fourth pillar of DC after Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. As Superman represents the perfect man, and Wonder Woman the perfect woman, Batman and Harley Quinn symbolize everyone else by comparison, through their imperfections and their mental illness, while still being driven to do things small and large. Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn was an important milestone for a character that originated in the Batman animated series, and has become a household name for being a relatable character ever since. And Margot Robbie mostly captures what makes the character special, I think. Honestly, her performance suffers from the same problem that other performances in this movie suffer from: poor writing and characterization. She's not playing the Harley Quinn from the Batman animated series, or even Harley from her own cartoon on DC Universe. There's no scene where she comes off as someone who's not Harley Quinn, but the script never decides what kind of Harley Quinn she is. But like, Margot Robbie sells the lucid, insane Harley that shows up in the flashbacks and in all of her prison scenes. And she's good as the violent, competent criminal who knows exactly what's going on. But those aren't the same character. Robbie is emotive, she's inflexive, and she doesn't stand around and read her lines, which makes me excited to see her in Birds of Prey, which I will have seen at the time of this video's release, but not of writing. From Suicide Squad, I learned more about what Harley's thinking by the way she smiles, frowns, and looks at people more than I do from anything she says. That's the real problem. Her lines pretty much suck once they leave the prison, and Robbie's performance can't carry the poorly written character much farther once the team comes together. Like, her character falls apart in the second act before most of the plot does, which is a real shame. One of the things I noticed while watching this movie is how clear it is that Will Smith was the only one David Ayer gave the most thought and time into when he wrote the script. This, again, assuming he wrote the script. I'm pretty sure he wrote the script, and I'm too lazy to go check. But yeah, Will Smith, he has the best lines, which are all good separately, as in they sound good. The only line I remember coming off as cringy when Will Smith said it is the first time he says the movie's name, and, you know, when he's like, "So, what are we? Some kind of Suicide Squad?" Like, that line's terrible. Absolutely terrible. That's like the worst line he gives in this movie. That being said, Will Smith does what he can, but there's not much to do. which should be the title of this review, thinking about it. And that being said, I did really enjoy watching Will Smith be an asshole. The way he carries himself and the indifference in the way he speaks to people is pretty good. I'd like to see him play Deadshot again, or another villain, in a longer, fleshed out, well-written film. Will Smith is known for being charismatic, but Suicide Squad, if nothing else, shows that he also might be a good actor to play a character who's not charismatic by design. Maybe Will Smith shouldn't let himself be typecast so much. And that's like one good thing to come out of this film. But that being said, those three characters aren't the most talked about characters of the movie. Ironically, considering they're the only three part of the Suicide Squad. But the most talked about character is not them. None of them were the subject of countless memes, online bullying campaigns, really bad reshoots, and a complete expulsion from the franchise. What do I think about Jared Leto's Joker? I still like him. Get off my back. Is he my favorite performance? No. Do I think he's better than Jack Nicholson? Not particularly. Do I think he's better than Heath Ledger or Joaquin Phoenix? Dear God, no. Do I think he compares to Mark Hamill? Not on Hamill's worst performance. Does that make him bad? No, it does not. The worst thing Jared Leto does as Joker, aside from his creepy onset behavior, which is admittedly very bad, he shouldn't be doing that if half of those stories are true. The worst thing he does is be too different from what we're used to. Joker has been well written with the characteristics that Leto portrays. The sexualness, his gangster persona, his flamboyancy, the random and needless violence, none of that which Leto does is new to the Joker. It's just new to film. Honestly, he's closer to the modern comic version of the Joker than any of the other live-action actors. This reminds me of the Joker when he was written by Tom King, just with bad dialogue. He's the worst victim of the writing in this movie. Jared Leto brought a new personality with an embrace of look, admittedly, and David Ayer brought him all the wrong lines. I was enthralled by the way Jared Leto talks as the Joker, the way he walks as the Joker, the confident and knowing way he carries himself. He exudes power, and his presence is something to be feared. It's just that almost everything... No, not almost. Yeah, pretty much everything that comes out of this guy's mouth is just nonsense. Utter nonsense. They're like cool ideas that look good on paper. Like, he says, desire becomes surrender, and surrender becomes power. It could be a cool theme in a bunch of different contexts, especially in the context of Joker and Harley Quinn's abusive relationship. It could have been about how he gains power from her surrendering to her desire for him. It could have worked had the movie had the right build-up and follow-up. But like everything in this movie, it doesn't. It's like as David Ayer was making Suicide Squad, he realized that he'd rather make a Joker and Harley Quinn movie. While I can sympathize with writing one thing only to find I'm more interested in writing something else, the writer has to dedicate themselves to finishing what they started to deserve the chance to work on the next thing. This movie is one that I start liking. This is one of the movies that I think, like, so hard to describe. I really thought in my last video that I would still like Suicide Squad. But slowly I've come to dislike this movie the more I think about it. I like these characters, I like these actors, I like the visual style. It just needs a better writer who can focus on the writing and a director who can focus on the directing. It's easily the worst in the DCEU by far, though there's only 3 movies by my count technically that I'm gone through. But likely overall, I don't think I need to wait for the ranking portion of this video or any other video to tell anyone that this is probably going to be towards the bottom. Honestly. But how's the next movie? Wonder Woman. The movie that followed up Suicide Squad. Am I as about it as I was when I first watched it? Kind of. It actually wasn't a favorite of mine when I first watched it. Like, the movie Wonder Woman, not superhero. I love Wonder Woman as a character. But now, later when I have to rank these 2 movies, Wonder Woman is going to be the one that's a pain in the ass to rank. Because I have to place it based off my preference. But I feel other people's preferences clouding my own ranking. I guess I'll get to that when I get to it. But first, asides out of the way, I appreciate how all the Amazons have Gal Gadot's accent, or something similar to it, instead of just making her change her accent for the movie. I think it's hilarious to think about world-class actors like Robin Wright and Connie Nelson forcing themselves to learn an accent for an actor who doesn't have the same experience and cachet that they have. But because they're world-class actors, they make it work. Now, those aside, let's actually review the movie. When I was watching Wonder Woman, I experienced exactly what I was worried about when I decided to review these movies. I don't like movies themselves, like as a medium. I don't like them enough to review and rate any of them or all of them with deep and emotional thought. If it's not a movie I especially love or hate, I can't force myself to feel strong emotions about it. When I watch Wonder Woman, this is what happens. This is not because it's a bad movie. Not at all. Far from bad. But it's just good. It's a good movie. A damn good movie. But it doesn't do much new outside of the through line of making a female superhero the protagonist of a good movie. No one's going to argue that Elektra and Catwoman were good movies. They fucking suck. Like Batman or Robin levels of sucking. But this movie isn't one of the best superhero movies. It's good. It's an origin story movie. I expect Wonder Woman 1984 to be far superior. That's not to say Wonder Woman is by the books in every aspect. I said the only thing new the movie does is have a female protagonist in a good superhero movie, and they do a lot with that. The character of Wonder Woman is what I believe most people wanted from Superman. She's hopeful without fail at first, filled with doubts, but she keeps overcoming them at least until the end. Her mother, played by Connie Nelson, sets up the lie Diana believes perfectly with the line about humanity. They do not deserve you. Diana believes that people are intrinsically good, that people aren't actually doing bad things because they want to, but because Ares is making them. She has so much hope in humanity that we don't deserve. So much that she honestly believes that when she kills Ares, the world will be good again. But by God, humanity does all they can in this movie to prove that they don't deserve this kind of faith. And the only reason she accepts it is because she thinks Ares is controlling them. Like, first, the humanity in this movie is sexist, which was a given for the men of World War I, especially the ones in power. Whether Steve Trevor forcing them to change clothes or the generals literally throwing a hissy fit that a woman is in the war room, they're not exactly making a good impression. They literally talk over the guy talking about peace, which is essentially talking over the most important thing in the world to Diana. Second, maybe only to love, possibly. Like, geez, talk about taking the piss out of mankind, honestly. Then, in an even worse show, when Steve Trevor asks for permission to stop the mustard gas attack and save thousands of lives, a general in the war room says soldiers die, that is what they do. Diana is understandably and visibly horrified. These are the leaders, and throughout the movie she watches Steve and their team restrain themselves from helping people rather than just helping them. The Steve Trevor examples, like not being able to help the people in the trenches and not killing the villainous German leader when they first get the chance, are all more subtle than the Allied generals' disregard for women and those fighting on the front lines. I do want to point that out. But overall, this all lends to the theme that humanity doesn't deserve someone like Wonder Woman. But at the same time, Wonder Woman is the beautiful person she is because she saves us anyway. She spends the rising action of the movie feeding into the lie she tells herself until the very end, where she realizes humanity isn't being manipulated by Ares. Humanity is imperfect. The war isn't black and white. This is when her will to fight breaks. It's this moment where we see that she's not a Mary Sue, as some misinformed people claim. The world doesn't revolve around her character, as a movie would or a world would if she were a Mary Sue. She's overpowered, yes, and her naivete is played off as a joke at first. But ultimately, her naivete, or that's how I like to pronounce it, it's fun that way. That naiveness about her leads to her view of the world shattering and ultimately the death of Steve Trevor. It leads to her failure where she learns she can't fix everything, she can't fix humanity and bring Steve back. Her flaw had justified consequences, and she's naive afterwards no longer. It's this well-written, positive character arc that meshes well with the theme of the movie and shows that she's not a Mary Sue. Because if she was a Mary Sue, she wouldn't have this character arc. And the presentation of her arc, or like the completion of her arc, is a great moment, too, at first. The exact moment that Diana's lie, the lie that she believes is broken, is when she kills German General Ludendorff, whom she believes is Ares for half the movie. As in, like, half the runtime. Like, I know this she doesn't think about it until, like, the second quarter, and realizes it, like, about the third quarter. That's, like, half the movie runtime. And when she kills him, She expects everything to be better now that Ares is gone and he's not corrupting mankind. But absolutely nothing changes. The idea that men choose to be cruel, that Ares doesn't make them, goes against her whole reason for believing in them, and it threatens to destroy all her hope. It threatens her very reason for leaving her home. Then Steve Trevor gives this heartbreaking speech to her about how people aren't always good, Ares or no Ares. It sets up this terrific ending where Diana has to choose whether to help them end the war or not, decide whether they deserve her help or not. And when she would have inevitably made the choice to help, it would have completed the perfect ending to the movie's themes and Diana's character to have her go through that. But the movie doesn't do that. When I first saw this twist in the theater, I really liked it. The Prime Minister, the one who was talking about peace and being ignored, Professor Lupin from Harry Potter, he's the real Ares. And now watching it again, it ruins the ending. He goes through how he corrupted humanity while at the same time saying that's not what he did. Which leads to this weird understanding where he did and didn't cause the outcome of the war, but Ares did do it. But he told us that wasn't what was happening. But they showed us it happening in these weird flashbacks, so who the hell knows? I don't. The performance is good. The dialogue is good. But once you start thinking about it, it makes no sense. It's as if this reveal exists to warrant a subpar final battle. And the final battle is subpar at best. It's the second worst final fight in the DCEU by far. This is 3 movies in a row where the third act is the weakest. I still stand that the Doomsday fight in BVS is cool, but plot-wise, it is the weakest part of the film, where the through line doesn't even make sense to a super fan of the movie. Here in Wonder Woman, the final fight, while also plot line bad, even from a visual standpoint, it's boring and unnecessary, and honestly forced. The CGI is okay when she's fighting Ares. The only cool moment being when the armor comes on. When Ares becomes Ares and he takes his 2 fingers to make the eye holes in his helmet is the dopest, most badass image in the movie. And then is ruined when you see that the mustache underneath is still there. And then you get to see the okay fight choreography that follows. When Steve Trevor is killed and Diana loses it on the German soldiers, the CGI somehow gets worse as in the scene. It's a show that the CGI gets worse as this fight goes on. This whole fight did not need to happen. It's intersprung with the touching moments with Steve Trevor leading up to his death, but they can't redeem this action scene. There could have been another way for Steve Trevor to sacrifice himself without Diana needing a CGI video game boss to battle. Even worse, all the good character and story building that the movie does is completely undone after Diana actually kills Ares, where all the soldiers stop fighting each other. It's an odd choice that goes against the themes of humanity's imperfection, and Wonder Woman choosing to protect them despite it seems like the movie was actually worried that their theme would be too dark. It feels like a real cop-out. So yeah, I have problems with the ending, but the movie for 80% of it is great. This is the part where I say why, and the actors and their script is mostly why. I know I made a joke about everyone changing their accents to match Gal Gadot's, but in all seriousness, she really does sell it for her role as Wonder Woman. She has that smile that brightens up everyone's day. She's charming, she believes in everything that Wonder Woman... She's charming, she believes in everything that Wonder Woman says and believes. Wonder Woman is about truth, and Gal Gadot isn't phoning it in. She clearly is giving it her all. The most impressive thing is the fish out of water vibe Gadot gives Diana. She never oversells nor loses the character's innocence. Her tasting ice cream or seeing a baby being the perfect examples of this. This Wonder Woman has a real naivete that's central to her character arc here. It's her flaw as a character, to be hopeful with no realistic expectations for how people can really be. This can usually come off as annoying from another actor and another character, and it's a testament to Gadot's ability that she pulls this off. That being said, I won't lie, I am more excited to meet and experience Wonder Woman in the sequel. When she's released from the confines of an origin story, I have little doubt Gadot's performance won't shine even more. I just expect 1984 to be great. And Chris Pine, he proves that he's definitely in the running for the best Chris in Hollywood, up there with the Marvel's trinity of Chris's. Clearly, as someone whose first name is in no way similar, I obviously have no skin in that game. That's sarcasm. Jokes aside, Steve Trevor walks a fine line of being a man of his time and a man who sees and respects what Diana can do. It would be weird and a bit insulting to pretend like Steve Trevor would be a blatant feminist during World War One, completely lacking any prejudice. I say this as a black man who has seen movies of black characters in history and watched them be treated with and without inequality. And the latter can feel like pandering. I don't know how women feel about it. I can only guess, and that's my guess. But for this reason, I think the way Steve Trevor is written is far more realistic and honest, without making him seem like a dick. When Diana speaks about Ares and her way of life, asking her many questions about his society and how women behave, you can see the doubt and hesitation on his face. There's a restraint to say something mean, insulting, or brutally honest that he doesn't say, and Chris Pine portrays this well. Steve Trevor has seen proof and can tell that Diana's a capable warrior, that she has reason to believe what she says to be true, even if he doesn't, and he respects that. He has his moments where he says the clear, oh no phrases like, I can't let you do that, or you just can't, but it's well written and prepared. I'm glad to know he's going to be in the sequel, because I love his performance and how he's written and directed. Even though I feel his death was the best part of the movie's third act, I'm totally willing to, let them right around it. And, the crew Trevor assembles to help Diana is kind of useless, if not stereotypical, and a bit racist on second viewing. I mean, did we really need a stereotypical Native American chief, a Scottish drunk, and an Aladdin stand-in to make up for the team? I mean, really? It feels a little tone-deaf for a movie that's trying to avoid female stereotypes to be using racial ones instead. That being said, they are funny, and the conversations they have with Diana are good at showcasing the themes of war and its effects, both in World War I and before. The conversation between Diana and the chief about how Steve Trevor's people took his land is short and poignant. How Samir couldn't be an actor because of the color of his skin is subtle and sad. And Charlie's heartbreaking PTSD does more to show the horror of war than No Man's Land scene did in a fraction of the time. They had moments, but at the same time they truly had nothing but emotional resonance. They felt useless to the plot. They could have easily been one or two characters instead of three, and it would have flowed better. Honestly, I would have just gotten rid of Samir and given Charlie a moment where he actually pulls the trigger on that sniper rifle he keeps carrying around. And the villains are pretty good. Danny Houston, who plays General Ludendorff, the fake Ares, plays the villain in every film he's in. Honestly, in the lead up to this movie, I was so annoyed that the trailers were acting as if he wasn't Ares, and I was not buying it. He was a villain as always, but they did get me with that twist. They really got me. I really thought Danny Houston was Ares, and he wasn't, and they got me. But Danny Houston as General Ludendorff is pretty good. I liked him as a loyal and driven general, but he could have used more characterization. But movies do have to keep a runtime, a flaw of movies in general. A reasoning for why he won't surrender beyond that, he thinks that they can win, would have really helped Danny Houston's pretty good performance. The same goes for Dr. Poison. Elena Amaya, or Anaya, I'm not sure how you say it or if I'm spelling it right, but the actress who plays her is perfectly looking empty and devoid of sympathy until Ludendorff gives her the credit she deserves. And then she's great at being a loyal sidekick. But for the most part, Dr. Poison suffers as the general does. She doesn't have any deep motivation other than winning the war. She has that terrible scar on her face and has a saddening moment where it's revealed the Wonder Woman considers killing her. But the moment isn't really earned. We have no reason to pity her outside of the actor's good performance. Ares does fare a little better than Ludendorff or Dr. Poison in the amount of scenes that he has, but he squandered. Honestly, he just shouldn't have ever been in this movie. I've already said how his presence derails the third act, the themes of the movie, and nearly destroys Diana's character arc. There are ways this movie could have had the twist they did, but he never should have been the one to give Dr. Poison her formulas. That just hurt both their characters. Overall, I think the actors did a good job. It's in no way their fault their characters weren't fully realized, but they do all do enough to be in the leagues ahead of the Enchantress and Suicide Squad. I would have put any of these villains near Michael Shannon's Zod, who's still my favorite villain of these movies, and a little below BVS's villains because Batman is arguably a villain in that movie. He's a better one than anyone else. The only other thing I have to say about this movie is the action. I love the action in Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. And one of them has a few good ones here, but they aren't as good as I remember, honestly. It's full of cool choreography that's hard to see because of editing cuts, speed ups, and slow mos. Man of Steel did the super speed better, and BVS did the martial arts better. Watching them all back to back has really soured me on Wonder Woman's action scenes, and it kind of sucks. Like the sword and shield fighting, in particular, goes stale and boring save for a few shots. Wonder Woman's lasso, though, is truly the standout. The physics and the choreography of it is amazing. When she uses it to grapple soldiers, pull and throw objects, and to supplement her martial arts, we get the most exciting action scenes and see Wonder Woman at her most dangerous. It makes me really glad to learn that she won't be using her sword and shield in Wonder Woman 1984. But I think I've reviewed these two movies to death by now. It's time to actually rank them. I don't need to waste anyone's time. Suicide Squad is the worst movie by far, no question. The only contender who may take a spot eventually is Justice League. They're both movies that I liked when I first watched it, but progressively disliked the more I thought about them. Wonder Woman, on the other hand, is a good movie that I like, but has a weak third act. Wonder Woman is the movie that's harder to rank. Do I look semi-objectively, based it on the fact that Wonder Woman is an easier movie to understand than either BVS or Man of Steel, and has a more likable main character to boot? I won't deny that Wonder Woman has a complete character arc, theme, and movie, and it doesn't need extra digging or assumption to understand like the other two. But this movie just didn't entertain me, specifically like Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman does. In my phone, I have a list of my top 100 favorite movies of all time. Batman v Superman and Man of Steel are on it, and Wonder Woman is not. If I put Wonder Woman higher than those, am I saying I enjoyed it more? Because I factually didn't. But factually, it has qualities objectively better, while all the qualities I like about Zack Snyder's movies are all subjective. Still, I think I have to put Wonder Woman at number 3, because I need to be true to what I like and not anyone else. I love Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. I already did see and write a draft of my review of Birds of Prey by the time I'm releasing this movie, and I would not be surprised to see that movie having a chance of getting between those two or even topping the list, but we'll see. Birds of Prey and Aquaman are probably going to be in my top 100. Aquaman already is, and I foresee Birds of Prey being in my top 100 after I settle with that movie. But if they're both lower on my list than Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel, even after repeat viewings, I'll have to figure out whether I can rank them higher or lower. If I feel in my bones that they're better movies, and I don't just enjoy Man of Steel or Batman v Superman more for superficial reasons, they'll top my list. But if not, I'll probably have the most hated DCEU ranking on the internet. Not because everyone is watching, but because no one would agree with it if they did see it. But who knows? Maybe I'll love Shazam on a second viewing. Surprises could happen.